You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. I'm going to make a promise to everybody who listens to Sox in the Basement on any podcast player that they can find if they go to soxinthebasement.com. If they watch on YouTube, now that there's video most of the time, sometimes it doesn't work out, but most of the time there's video of this show as well from the 9-foot homemade oak bar, wherever the hell Ed is sitting at. And I want to make a promise to you right now. I will never do a mobile show again. Like, I knew I had to go on that trip. I knew I had to go speak at my buddy's funeral. I knew I had to get through that, and I think I was so targeted in on the fact that I had to do that weekend that I really didn't think about the show enough, and then I did it over the phone, and I know it sucked. So I'm sorry. And I blame Ed completely, 100%. It's all Ed's fault. Ed was like, it'll be fine. I'll fix it. It's all Ed's fault. So if you have any more angry letters to send them to Ed. Sound good, bud?
Well, my name is Patrick. You've hired me in place of Ed, who has been replaced summarily for his failures the other day.
I think, right beforehand, I was like, I want to talk about that. He's like, I did everything I possibly could. I'm like, I know you did, buddy. I'm not mad at you. Then I threw him right underneath the bus. Hey, you know, there's nothing you could be done about it.
You've got more buses in your pockets than any man I know.
I throw more people under the bus than Ozzie Guillen throws people under the bus. All right, and that's how I do my radio shows. I do them just like Ozzie Guillen would manage a team. I just throw people under the bus. Let's throw Jerry Reinsdorf under the bus on an episode of Sox in the Basement.
Change the name of the show. Bus in the Basement. Here we go.
On an episode of Sox in the Basement brought to you by Cork and Carry at the Park at 33rd and Princeton, in the shadow of the ballpark, with the ballpark favorites and the award-winning burgers and the great selection at the bar, the wine, the spirits, the beers, the rotating taps, the indoor-outdoor seating, just all that they have, the great staff that they have out there. It's a great place to go before, during, or after a game. We were telling you before, people are just going there and hanging out instead of going inside and watching this team, which is a shame sometimes to me, because I feel like they should be winning more games. I don't know how you only win one against the Mets. I don't know how you get swept by the Orioles, because I see guys like Mike Tauchman hitting well, and Miguel Vargas might have hit a bump, but there's enough offense on this team. And the starting pitching hasn't been atrocious. It's like they just can't find a win right now, and that's the next hump that they have to get over. That's what Will Venable has to do, and as you're waiting for him to figure it out and you go to a game, get over to Cork and Carry at the Park, 33rd and Princeton, see more at corkandcarry.com. But the big news, and I love it so much.
It's so fun.
It's the most amazing thing if you're a White Sox fan who understands that Jerry Reinsdorf is a poverty owner that should have sold this team a decade or more ago, when he became an owner incapable of footing the bill required to run a Major League Baseball team. He's unable to pay the salaries that he should be able to pay in one of the largest markets in the country, and he's unable to make moves like build a new stadium on that Block 78. Remember the Block 78 stuff? Oh, Block 78, here's an artist rendering. Jerry's going down to the Capitol to get public funding. He's threatening to move to Nashville. He's using every trick that he had in the 80s, and they're not working now, and he doesn't know why. Nobody will give him any respect, because there's no way you could build a stadium in that unused lot, in that premier location on the near south side of Chicago without public funding. And then, of course,
unless you happen to own the Chicago Fire.
Right, the billionaire owner of the Chicago Fire. And Jerry's supposedly a billionaire, right? A couple $1 billion, according to Forbes.
Yeah, you kept saying he's unable to foot the bill for all these things. He's unable to do this. My understanding is that he's able, just unwilling.
Right, well, then that's why he's a poverty owner.
So, yeah.
That's why he shouldn't have a team. That's why Major League Baseball should look at Jerry Reinsdorf and say, enough. I mean, I think if he was younger and he was running this team this way, I think that the rest of the owners would have to start looking at him as, maybe we need to find a way to remove him. Maybe we need to get him out of there. At this point, it's kind of like, he's not going to last that much longer. And then somebody else will move in there. And we've got this guy who's buying up shares over there. And there's better days on the horizon. So they're just going to be a doormat for the next 5 years or so. And then he'll die. And then somebody else will come in and actually run it the way it should be run. Because the owner of the Chicago Fire is now putting a $650 million stadium. Wasn't Jerry asking for $2 billion? A $650 million
Yes.
stadium that's exclusive just for soccer. And guess who's paying for it? The owner of the Chicago Fire is paying for it. It's all privately funded. They bought the 78, and they're going to build a state-of-the-art stadium there because that guy who owns an MLS team in a market in which so many people don't even remember we have an MLS team, he's willing to foot the bill and elevate his franchise to make them yet another entertainment option. And guess what? If the White Sox don't think they're competing with that, they're wrong. Because here is another place now that you'll be able to go and spend your entertainment dollar where somebody's going to field the team and give you an entertainment experience that's going to be better than what you're getting right now at 35th and Shields. That's incredible to me. Jerry Reinsdorf woke up today, and the first thing he probably thought was, maybe I should call him and see if we can get in there. And guess what he's going to do, Jerry?
Yeah.
He's going to laugh at you. This guy should not, Jerry Reinsdorf shouldn't be owning a major franchise in the city of Chicago. He is a joke at this point. Whatever you believe he accomplished decades ago, at this point, the fact that the soccer team in town moved onto the block that he was bringing guys down the river and having parties and trying to hobnob with all these politicians and trying to get them to approve public funding and threatening to leave, all these things he tried to do. And this guy just looked at that probably and said, hey, can we drop some architectural plans? Maybe we'll swoop in there and take that. And he did. That's amazing to me. Amazing. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall the moment that Jerry found out about it.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, granted, $650 million for a 22,000 seat soccer stadium with entertainment around it. It's going to be an experience of sorts. Joe Mansueto has described it that way. Then he's the owner of the Fire, by the way, if you don't know that. And it's one of those things where, okay, you can see where Jerry's price tag of $2 billion makes sense for a state-of-the-art Major League Baseball ballpark versus an MLS park. But nevertheless, it was something where you have this guy swooping in and saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I want to bring this to the city of Chicago. I want to see if I can create something here to help turn a worldwide game into something that Chicago can be a destination for. Because they do stuff at Soldier Field, of course, but not all the time. And the other part of that is you have the Bears, when they were looking at a new stadium, they at least went and bought Arlington Park as leverage. And if they end up in Arlington Heights, that is what it is. I wouldn't have expected Jerry to want to go to the northwest suburbs, but it's still one of those things where at least Kevin Warren and the McCaskey family understood that if they're going to wine and dine the mayor of the city of Chicago, if they're going to wine and dine the governor of the state of Illinois, if they're going to wine and dine state senators and representatives to try and get some public funding, at least have a fallback plan. Jerry's fallback plan was to go out to lunch with the mayor of Nashville, and then what? You're gonna get approval, like you said. The other owners are going to approve moving a team out of Chicago and into Nashville because that makes sense. That makes sense for revenue for the sport, for exposure for the sport. No, at some point, yeah, you do, as the other owners, you start to look at this and go, look, baseball is not as hot as it was 50 years ago in terms of being the national pastime. Even soccer is kind of passing it by when you think about how many kids play soccer versus how many kids play baseball. So why are we letting this guy ruin one of the teams in the third biggest market? You wouldn't put up with this if it was New York. If Jerry owned the Mets, Jerry would not be allowed to behave this way.
No.
Okay?
No, he
if
wouldn't
Jerry
be.
owned the Angels, he wouldn't be allowed to behave this way. I mean, and even the Angels franchise, as bad as that is, they've at least been able to hold on to Mike Trout for what will probably be his entire career, except for a few stops at the end. And here we are, we're saddled with a bunch of non-stars. And when we did have an opportunity to build something 20 years ago is when they won the World Series, when you had the opportunity to try and keep some of that core together, slowly it was dismantled for financial reasons. Aaron Rowand is traded not because you really need Jim Thome as your DH. He's traded because they knew he was going to get a large contract in the near future. And sure enough, that's what he got from the Giants.
Here's what's interesting, Ed. I'm looking at NBC5 Chicago. The White Sox released a statement. I want to read this because then I want to pick it apart. Related Midwest first approached the White Sox about building a new ballpark on a piece of property they were developing, and we continue to consider the site as an option. We believe in Related Midwest vision for the 78 and can remain confident on the riverfront location that it could serve as a home for both teams. We continue to have conversations with Related Midwest about the site's possibilities and opportunities. Listen, it doesn't matter. First of all, I read that and I think the way that that's written is they're annoyed at Related Midwest. That first sentence smacks up. They came to us first, and this sucks. But I'm sure there's a place for us to go. The stadium is going to be soccer specific. They're not going to share the stadium. So now you're going to have a large area that's going to be taken up by a soccer stadium, and you have an owner that's going to foot the bill for it. So how do the White Sox move into that spot? Realistically, how would the White Sox fit onto the 78 now if $650 million being spent by another team and they're developing the area? You're now going to downgrade your plan and try to fit yourself in there somehow, let that guy build all the restaurants and kind of try to glom onto it, and then you're still probably going to go to somebody and say, well, we're going to need public funding, and they're going to laugh at you because this guy doesn't need the public funding. So I think that's the funny thing. The White Sox lost all their leverage. They can release all the statements they want to. They lost all their leverage. Well, nobody's using this. Well, now somebody is. Well, we could develop it and we can improve the neighborhood. The Fire are going to improve the neighborhood. Well, we're going to need some public funding. They don't need any public funding. And by the way, now they're going to take up a lot of space on that lot too. You're going to have to fit yourself around them. So you release all the statements you want to. Today was a miserable day for Jerry Reinsdorf, and he deserves it.
Yeah, well, and the other part of that is you're not going to convince Major League Baseball to let you into a stadium that is 22,000 seats or even 30,000 seats. You have to double the size of what he's proposing.
Right. So now, you got to find a way to get him, and he's not going to do that. This guy's spending $650 million, Ed. That's a soccer stadium. He doesn't need Jerry Reinsdorf. He doesn't need any of his money. He's already doing it on his own. He moved on his own. So now Jerry would have to build something next to it. Like to me, and then he doesn't have the money for it, or he doesn't seem to be willing to spend the money for it. So at that point, you can release all the statements you want to. The way I read this is the White Sox blustered and boasted and acted like they were the only ones that are going to be able to move in there and revitalize that neighborhood, and all they were going to need is all the taxpayer dollars they could possibly get their hands on. And somebody else swooped in and said, I can do this. And they did it. And now the Sox don't know how to react today, and they got to release something. And that's the way I see it. Before we keep going on this, Hyatt Home Medical Equipment, located on the southwest side of Chicago, in the suburbs, in Evergreen Park, actually, wants you to help with that changeover, switching to a new age of life. But they also do some pretty interesting things with day-to-day issues that you might have. They use Jopes compression stockings. They are a leading name in compression therapy, known for their commitment to quality and innovation, and they are available at Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. They have comfort, durability, a variety of styles and compression levels, and they're fashionable. People are not going to know that's what you're using these for. They're effective in all kinds of managements for problems that you may be having, such as blood clots and varicose veins. They help with your overall leg health, and they are available at Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Check them out at hhme.com. But I think this is over. You can release all the statements you want to. You're trying to tell me now we're going to fit another stadium on the same thing next to the soccer stadium? I just don't see how that's going to happen. And there's no way this guy's letting you into his privately funded building and making it a hybrid stadium. That's not happening either.
No, not at all. This smacks of there was one cupcake left and you got two kids, and the one kid did his chores and got the cupcake, and now Jerry Reinsdorf's the other kid who is sitting there going, but I was gonna. And
you promised me a cupcake. Can I have half of his? Nope, cupcake's gone. No more cupcakes.
Yeah, cupcake is gone. I said first person to come up with a plan and execute gets the cupcake. And that's what happened. The Chicago Fire are coming to the 78. They're going to build a stadium. They're going to build some stuff around it, some restaurants and entertainment. They're going to turn that into a venue. I bet you there's concerts there. I bet you they have other things that go on in that stadium that they're going to be able to make some money off of. And Jerry's mad about it because he didn't get it for free, right? That's the thing. He didn't get it for free.
What a poverty owner. And he just continues, the light continues to shine on this man towards the end of his days as the owner of the White Sox, showing how poor he was at running the team. Speaking of poor, Luis Robert Jr. is a poor baseball player this year. I mean, it's awful. He's really, really bad. I mean, like I'm sitting here playing with stats going, well, maybe in the last 30 days has been good. Nope, still hitting 158. Like he's bad. And I understand that he plays good defense. And I understand that he's stealing bases when he's able to get on base. And, hindsight being 2020, you should have taken any of the deals that were offered for him last year. But back then, you didn't expect this guy to fall off so much. Now you have Bruce Levine on the radio talking about how the White Sox are basically preparing themselves to just let him finish out the season and let him go. To be honest with you, if that's their plan, DFA him well before that. But I think what you need to do is you need to take the bag of balls that's offered to you. Like at some point, somebody's going to come in and it's going to be the best available thing. This is where scouting comes in, Ed. Like if the Tampa Bay Rays had a broken Luis Robert Jr., they'd find something out there that looked broken, but they knew they could fix it. And that's what the Sox have to do here. They have to wait for they have to wait, bide their time, hope that he has a little bit of a spark. I mean, if there's anything wrong, like he's been talking about his knee, he's been talking about different things that aren't going right, maybe put him on the IL for a couple of weeks. Get him as healthy as you possibly can, let him restart. If he gets hot for a couple of weeks, move him for the best thing possible. I just don't think you finish out the year and let him play until the last game of the season and walk. I know you're not giving him $20 million. Like I wouldn't give him $20 million. You're giving him $15 million this year to be terrible. I don't know what his deal is. His friends left the team. If Yoan Moncada's not on the team, maybe he's sad. I don't understand it. But you got to get even if it's just some low level player that's like a project, take that. Because I'm going to tell you, if he's hitting 150 on August the 1st, designate him for assignment after the trade deadline.
Yeah, well, and that's, to your point about getting something for the guy, there's going to be a team as we approach the deadline that is still going to have something of a Hail Mary in them, okay? Where they're going to look at it and go, okay, maybe we can turn something back into something, or if we can just get him going, we've got enough of a team to make a run. There's a flawed team out there that could use an outfielder. Guaranteed, it will happen that way. The question is, can Chris Getz scout well enough? Because sitting there taking, some low-level prospects that might pan out in a few years, that's one way to go. But it comes back to scouting. Do they have something that you think you can develop?
Well, I don't think he scouts. That's the thing. You're waiting for Brian Bannister to identify a pitcher that he thinks if we teach him the cutter and if we change his mix, that we can make him into something. Or you're waiting for Ryan Fuller to do the same thing on the hitting end. You're waiting for them to identify the Miguel Vargas that's out there. That's what they got to do.
That's scouting, though, yeah. Chris. That's scouting.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. I guess I'm just semantics. Like Getz isn't scouting anybody because I don't think he does that.
He is the general manager. He needs to be doing some of that, or at least relying on his scouting staff. I'm sorry. He's got to this is a special project for him. He's got to take special interest in this. This is not, what do we get for Eric Fetty? We plucked him off of the KBO, and he showed that he had made some changes from when he was with the Washington Nationals. Now let's see if we can turn him into something. If it's a guy like Miguel Vargas, okay, who is out there, and there are plenty of failed prospects out there. If there's a guy like Miguel Vargas that's out there that fits the bill that, to your point, Ryan Fuller, Brian Bannister can work with, okay, that Will Venable can work with, that the coaching staff can work with, then absolutely go for that, because you might find something there. Or get those low-level guys who your scouting department has recognized Brian Bannister's way or Ryan Fuller's way will turn this guy into something. We can develop this player. Right? It's one of those types of things where I think our expectations as fans has been that Luis Robert Jr.'s value was one where he was going to be traded and you were going to get back 3 or 4 immediate impact guys that were going to turn the tides of this franchise around. Kind of like the Garrett Crochet trade sort of purports to be, right? We're 25% of the way there. We'll see what happens with Teal and Montgomery. But in this situation, I think it's more, you're looking at this from the standpoint of cutting your losses. Is there somebody out there that is scuffling at the major league level but has a good minor league pedigree that you can do, or somebody who's blocked by another team? I know we talked about Kobe Mayo somewhere in your garbled transmissions from Friday, but we talked about Kobe Mayo. And before he decided to try and tackle Lenine Sosa and failed spectacularly at doing so, he's a guy that's kind of blocked. There's guys that are out there that you might be able to turn into a White Sox player for the next few years and get something out of them. But I would just say lowered expectations. But I agree with you. Why don't let him walk if there's something of potential value out there? Just let him go. Just let him. And don't worry, as a White Sox fan, don't worry if he goes out there and does well, because if he's anything like Yohan Moncada and Tim Anderson, he won't.
Right. That's the thing. They'll have a spark. They'll play well for a little bit. Then he'll get injured. He's not going to become the player that you always wished he was going to be after he leaves. I keep looking. It's funny, as you're talking, I keep looking up stupid teams. Like, I'm looking at prospect lists for the dumbest teams in Major League Baseball, besides us, right? And I don't think we're as dumb as some of these teams, right? Like, the Pirates seem dumber than us right now. Not as dumb. Like, when Hahn and Williams were in charge, equally dumb. But they seem like a dumber franchise now. The Angels continue to stack their team with ex-White Sox players. So they're clearly dumb. So, like, those are the lists that I'm looking at, right? It's the Angels. That's who you knock on their door. It's the Pirates, although I don't think they're paying $20 million for them. Like, you got to find somebody who's got money who's dumb. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they figure they're going to have to let him walk, because they're not trading a guy that's making $8 million. They're trading a guy that's going to make $20 next year. So you got to find a team that has no problem spending the $20 million, that somehow believes that Luis Robert Jr., in a change of scenery, will become worth $20 million. They're dumb and they have money. You got to find dumb with money right now. So the Pirates cross them off the list. The Angels are dumb with money, aren't they? Yeah, they're normally
Angels are dumb with money.
Dumb with money. The Angels are your target. They're always like sitting in the top 10 payroll and they're not making the playoffs. They're dumb with money.
The Mets have money. I don't know if they're dumb enough.
I don't think he's dumb. That's the thing. I don't think they're dumb enough to go after him. You got to find dumb with money. And really the dumbest team that has money is the Angels. And they already love White Sox players. Like, if I'm Chris Getz, I'm going out to Anaheim, Los Angeles. Where I'm whining and dining and trying to do everything I can to just find one guy that they've got down there that you're just kind of interested in. Like, my scouts should be sitting in Los Angeles right now in Anaheim, because they're in Anaheim. It's Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. They should be sitting out there, and they should be sitting in their minor league system, and they should just be trying to find something and then hoping this team is dumb enough to take him.
Yeah, it absolutely. I mean, if you want, you can take him to a Fire game. I hear, it's a good spot to be.
Well, it'll take a couple years for them to build that venue. But eventually that'll be a destination that when you're trying to, impress somebody, you can take them over there. That's what you can do. You take.
I mean, you can still take them down to SeatGeek Stadium.
This weekend when I was out of town, I just took my daughter with me to the thing up in Minnesota for my buddy, because he was her godfather, right? So I went up there. So my older son, who's 17 years old, who lives with me all the time, I was like, you got to find a place to stay for the next couple of days. So he went to his mother's house. And he was trying to find stuff for himself to do. He was like, I'm not going to stay here for 3 days. I got to find something to do. So he goes and he hangs out with his cousins. And they're all Cubs fans. And they go to Wrigley. Now, again, this goes back to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, right? This is the same cousin that was rejected at the gate by the White Sox and not allowed in. Who now is like, let's go to Wrigley, and tells Dominic, let's go to Wrigley and watch a game. So the White Sox would not be an option. It would be, now it's the Cubs. The Cubs are the option now for these teenage boys. So they go up there with a couple other kids, and they go to the ball game on Friday. And I asked Dominic, I was like, how was it? He goes, it's really cool there. He's like, I know I'm a White Sox fan, but look at that neighborhood. The whole thing is basically built around the team. There's a million things to do. He just starts rambling about how awesome it is. This is the problem the White Sox have. This is why this owner can't own this team and it be successful. Somebody else has to come in who understands that. Because here's a teenage boy who lives in a house with a diehard White Sox fan father, whose entire basement is nothing but White Sox memorabilia. In everything, he went to the game wearing a plain green shirt. His cousin was in Cubs gear. Everybody else was wearing Cubs gear. He refused to wear it, right? He's a true blue White Sox fan. And he comes back from the game going, man, there's a lot of cool stuff there. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
That's the difference. That's the difference. I can only teach him that this is his team for so long. Before he sits there and he goes, it's a better baseball game. There's more stuff to do. Look at all these girls here. He's 17 years old. This is the problem that they have. This is the problem with the fact that you asked for public funding for the 78 and a soccer team said, we could do this. You could do it too. I mean, Forbes has him at about $4 billion. That's what they have Jerry Reinsdorf at. It's obviously all on paper. It's not actually in cash. He has no assets, obviously. He's like one of those billionaires that doesn't really have money. It's got to be that. That's why his net worth is that. But he really doesn't have any cash in the bank because he's missing out on a massive opportunity. Because what was his last thing that he offered to put up $200 million if the state put up $2 billion?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. That's what he was going to offer. I remember it being something low. So he's at more than a third. He's at less than a third of what this other billionaire who owns an MLS team is going to foot to build his state-of-the-art stadium and start putting stuff around there and building it up, because you have to have that destination that my 17-year-old just saw on Friday at Wrigley Field.
Well, and the idea behind that too is, you look at the Cubs, and let's talk about the Cubs for 1 second here. They're a team that is doing pretty well this year. They're not lighting the world on fire. They don't have those like transcendent stars necessarily. Who is it on the Cubs right now? Pete Crow Armstrong? Maybe he's gaining some traction.
Kind of a star. Ed, I gotta tell you, he's kind of a star. He really is coming in. They're 37-22 as we sit here, sitting 4 games up in first place in their division. They're a playoff team that has prospects that are blocked right now. They got that catcher down there in AAA who's so good, and they got no room for him. Pete Crow Armstrong shows up, and he's lighting the world on fire. Like, if you're a young kid like my son, like, this is the team here for the next couple of years. The White Sox are just hoping to find a couple more Chase Meidroths and Miguel Vargases and work within a bad payroll in a ballpark area that doesn't even compare to what Wrigleyville is. I mean, I got my work cut out for me right now with these kids if I'm going to keep them as fans on the South Side.
No kidding. And you and I are sitting here talking about how do we mitigate our costs and as White Sox, how do they cut their losses on Luis Robert Jr.? What are the Cubs talking? The Cubs are talking about whether or not they're going to be able to extend Kyle Tucker. Right. They made a move for in the offseason. So if you're a Cubs fan right now, you're trying to decide, should I be invested in Kyle Tucker because I don't want to see him go and be a Yankee next year after I've kind of become a fan of his? What are we talking about? We're talking about, well, if Luis Robert Jr. gets a minor league deal from the Rays and gets reunited with the Durham Bulls with Eloy Jimenez next year, how's that going to look for the White Sox? That's really what, one of the differences is. So if you're Jerry and you had the opportunity to turn the White Sox, even if the White Sox aren't that interesting on the field, but turn the White Sox into a place to go, people will follow and the money will come, and then you can make them a little bit more interesting. The Ricketts family did it the right way when they rebuilt. They augmented their prospects with guys like John Lester, right? And some veterans that were able to help them get over the hump and win a World Series. And then what have they done since then? They've never been really bad, but Wrigley Field remains a destination. Wrigley Field remains this place that people go to for concerts. That's what I've been there for lately, is I've gone, to see bands there a bit more than I've baseball. But your son is impressed by the experience of going down to that ballpark. Your son, who does not care about the outcome of that game,
had a good time.
Nobody
denied him entry at the gate, and he had a good time up there.
And before I get more comments directed at me for anything other than your lousy audio from Friday, when we are talking about this, I understand that was the big difference between Cubs and White Sox fans for years, is that the bleacher bums were just there to look at girls, drink beer, and just party, right? They didn't care about baseball the way White Sox fans cared about baseball. Well, the problem is that if you've got a franchise owner who doesn't care about baseball, doesn't care if you care about baseball, doesn't want to put something on the field that gives you something to care about, and then is not willing to foot the bill to try and make the ballpark experience more interesting, you are going to lose generations to come. And then pile it on with what we've talked about, some of the goofiness of of stories we heard about, just having bobblehead tickets, not game tickets, and then, teenagers not being allowed in the park because there were some rabble-rousers at one gate one time a little bit before the game, and so they deny all teenagers entrance. How does Jerry expect to compete? He's losing to the fire.
The Cubs are making more Cubs fans. The White Sox are making soccer fans. That's the story today.
Right.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.